Who are you, boatman?
Let's move.
We don't need this shit. We're going back to the boat.
You're not going anywhere. Let's move.
In the eastern part of the city, an ethnic group is oppressed, and foreign journalists declare that chemical weapons have been used in Burma by the military rulers, leading to a national uprising. The actions of the military regime in Burma have captured the world's attention as they reject all dissent. Thousands of people took to the streets, and thousands have been killed. Many monks have become victims, and even some foreign journalists have been reported killed. Rape and torture occur daily. Young boys are tortured and forced to become soldiers. Massacres have become commonplace. The Karen people, mostly poor farmers, have been targeted for destruction. The ruling military government desires the abundant natural resources in Karen land. The Burmese army declared war against the Karen people that has been going on for almost 60 years, making it the world's longest-running civil war.
Has been used in Burma by military rulers.
Has led to the national uprising.
The bloody Burmese military campaign against the Karen people has been going on for almost 60 years.
In the deep forests of Thailand, John Rambo, along with his companion, is searching for and capturing cobras. 20 years after the events in Afghanistan and the Vietnam War, Rambo now resides in Thailand. Rambo earns a living by catching snakes and providing boat rides for crossings near the Thailand-Burma border. There, cobras often become a spectacle for the audience in the show arena. While Rambo is selling his captured snakes, a group of missionaries from Colorado, America, comes to find Rambo. One of them, a man named Michael, meets Rambo and wants to hire Rambo's boat services. They plan to cross into Burma. Upon hearing this, Rambo refuses because their destination is a war-torn conflict zone. But Michael explains that they are volunteers on a humanitarian mission. They bring medicines, medical equipment, and so on for the Karen people. But Rambo still refuses.
Are you bringing in any weapons?
Of course not.
Burma's a war zone.
Well.
Sarah Miller, Michael's fiancée, visits Rambo's residence and tries to persuade Rambo to take them to Burma. But Rambo continues to refuse. At the same time, in a rice field in Burma, the Burmese army led by Major Tintin takes several villagers for execution. They even turn the impending execution of villagers into a betting event. Some soldiers throw mines into the fields and force the prisoners to run across the rice paddies.
Hey!
Sarah, accompanied by Michael, again visits Rambo at his home and insists on asking for Rambo's help to transport them. They must go to Burma because there many innocent villagers are killed without reason. But Rambo still refuses. That night, in Burma, Major Tintin leads his troops to plunder a village. His soldiers cruelly forcibly recruit young boys into the army. At the same time, Rambo sees Sarah on his boat. Then Rambo approaches her. Sarah insists on asking for Rambo's help to take them to Burma. Rambo still refuses and tries to explain to Sarah. Rambo says that their presence in Burma will not change anything. The natural instinct of humans, just like animals in Burma, is to kill as easily as breathing, and it will continue because there they kill for the sake of the country. But it's not the country that wants it, it's the people in power. No one wins, but innocent people become victims. Rambo doesn't want Sarah to waste her life like that, but Sarah says that if she tries to help other lives, it means she is not wasting her life. Sarah's words touch Rambo's heart, and he agrees to take them.
Thank you.
In the evening, they crossed the river, the territory of the Burmese pirates. Rambo then asked everyone on the boat to bow down and remain silent as their boat passed in front of the pirates' headquarters. But suddenly, the pirates approached Rambo's boat. Rambo then asked everyone on the boat to stay quiet and bow down. The pirates inspected Rambo's boat and saw a woman on Rambo's boat. They demanded Rambo to hand over Sarah to them. If not, everyone on Rambo's boat would be killed. Rambo didn't stay silent.
What did you do?
Rambo decided to turn back, but Sarah stopped him and asked Rambo to continue the journey with persuasion and a little touch. Rambo complied with Sarah's request. The next day, they arrived at their destination. Michael informed Rambo that they would take the land route for the journey back. So Rambo didn't need to wait for them, guided by the locals. Sarah's group then entered the forest on their journey to their destination. On the way back home, Rambo approached the pirate ship that had hijacked them earlier. Rambo took the ship to a hidden place on the riverbank and then burned it. Michael was already in their destination village. There, they immediately provided assistance to the villagers. But not long after, the village was attacked by the Burmese army. They ruthlessly killed the villagers and forcibly recruited young boys to become soldiers. Meanwhile, young women were taken as sex slaves. Sarah and her surviving companions were also captured in the attack. At the Burmese army headquarters, Sarah and her companions were held captive separately. The Burmese army also immediately trained the young boys they captured to become soldiers. That night, at his residence, Rambo was approached by Michael's companion, a priest from a church in Colorado, America. The priest told Rambo that Michael's team should have returned 10 days ago. But until then, they had not returned. They also received information from the Karen rebel army that Michael's team was captured by the Burmese army. They had tried to seek help from the American embassy, but at that time, the embassy could not help. But they had hired experienced mercenaries to carry out the rescue mission because they had no other choice. For that reason, Rambo was asked to take the mercenaries to the place where Michael's team was captured. Previously, Rambo had already taken them there. Then Rambo asked the priest to pray for Michael's team and himself.
Lord, grant that I may not seek to be consoled as to console. Where there is doubt, faith, that we awake to eternal life.
The next day, Rambo brought the mercenaries to the place where Michael's team was captured. Along the way, the mercenary commander named Diaz kept talking arrogantly and inappropriately about the lives of people in the village. But Rambo ignored him. After traveling quite a distance, they finally reached the place where Michael's team was dropped off. Two local guides named Min Dan Ta, who were members of the Karen rebel group, were waiting for their arrival. Rambo brought his equipment, planning to join, but he was prohibited. He asked Rambo to just guard the boat. One mercenary named Joe didn't mind if Rambo joined, but the commander still forbade it.
Come on, move.
Guided by Min Dan Ta, the mercenaries moved towards their target on foot. After traveling several kilometers, they finally reached the village where Michael's team was captured. Min then asked his companion to go back home. Not long after, they were surprised by the arrival of the Burmese soldiers. The Burmese army came to the village to execute the villagers as usual. The hiding mercenaries could only watch without being able to help. Min, seeing his fellow villagers treated this way, could only contain his anger. But shortly after, Rambo arrived and eliminated them all. Some villagers were saved by Rambo. Diaz immediately asked Rambo who he really was. Rambo ignored him and asked them to move quickly, but the frightened Diaz ordered his team to return to the boat immediately. Rambo threatened Diaz and asked the mercenaries to continue their mission and he would help.
You're not going anywhere. Let's move.
That night, using Burmese military vehicles, they moved towards the Burmese army headquarters while strategizing and assigning tasks. Previously, Jose had been assigned to take a position in the watchtower and kill the guard in the tower. After passing the guard post, they moved according to the plan. At the same time, the enemy was busy with a dance performance by the female prisoners. They were completely unaware of the presence of the mercenaries in their headquarters. Rambo approached the place where the prisoners were held captive and successfully freed Michael and one of his companions. Then Rambo moved back to where Sarah was detained. All the captives were freed, but Rambo and Sarah were separated from the group of mercenaries as they decided to leave first, heading towards the plantation area. Only Joe was willing to wait for Rambo. The three of them then moved in different directions to escape. The next day, their actions were discovered by the Burmese army. Major Teton directed all his forces, including the tracking dog team and river patrol troops, to pursue them. Major Teton divided his forces to chase from various directions. In their escape, Diaz stepped on a landmine, severely injuring his leg due to the explosion. The Burmese soldiers knew their location in this dire situation. Min, their guide, disappeared.
Where's the guide? Son of a bitch is gone! Fucking, I know the coordinates.
Rambo, Sarah, and Joe continued to run towards the top of the cliff, but not long after, they heard the sound of tracking dogs. Rambo tore a small part of Sarah's clothing to distract the chasing tracking dogs. Then Rambo asked Sarah and Joe to continue fleeing towards the southeast, heading to the river where his boat was, and they would meet there later. Rambo asked for lemur mines from Joe and requested Joe to fire his weapon into the air so that the Burmese soldiers would chase him. Hearing the gunshot, Major Tetton then mobilized part of his troops to enter the forest for the pursuit. Rambo successfully drew the attention of the Burmese soldiers to chase him into the forest. Rambo set up a mine and tied it with a torn piece of Sarah's clothing, covering it with dry leaves. After that, Rambo went as far as possible, leaving that place. Joe and Sarah, who continued running towards the river, stopped because they saw movement on the riverbank. From a distance, they saw the Burmese soldiers successfully capturing the mercenaries. The mercenaries were brutally beaten by the Burmese soldiers. Then Major Tetton ordered his subordinates to prepare for the execution of the mercenaries. Joe and Sarah could do nothing. But unexpectedly, Rambo appeared and eliminated the Burmese soldiers.
敌人认为算得高你，加油！
In 1939, a man named Władysław Szpilman, a famous pianist, was performing on a radio station in Warsaw. However, in the middle of his performance, the radio station was hit by an explosion from a German air raid. The broadcast was cut off, and everyone panicked, running out of the building. As Szpilman was about to leave, he encountered a fan, a Polish woman named Dorota, who was also his friend's sister.
I came especially to meet you. I love your play.
Come on, Dorota, you can write him a letter later. This isn't the best time. Come on.
Upon arriving home, Szpilman saw his family packing, preparing to leave Warsaw as the new defense line had shifted. However, Szpilman and his sister Halina refused to leave. They all argued until they heard a radio broadcast announcing that Poland was no longer facing Germany alone, as England, America, and France would join the war against Germany. Hearing this news, Szpilman and his family felt happy and confident that Germany would soon be driven out of their country. Day by day, the war situation worsened the country's economy. Spillman and his family were Jewish. The Germans, having successfully invaded Poland, imposed special regulations for Jews, starting with a limit on the amount of money allowed to be kept at home, which left Spillman's family confused about where to hide their excess money. A few days later, Spillman took Dorota on a date. When they were about to enter a cafe, they saw a warning sign that Jews were prohibited from entering the cafe. Dorota then suggested going to the city park, but Spillman told her that Jews were also banned from the park. Dorota felt that the special regulations for Jews were increasingly discriminatory. A few days later, a new regulation for Jews was announced in the newspapers. They were required to wear identification markers to distinguish between Jews and Poles. Jews who did not comply with this regulation would be severely punished. One day, when Spillman's father was on his way home after shopping, he encountered German soldiers. Just because he did not greet them, the German soldiers beat Spillman's father.
Euch ist der Gehweg verboten.
Entschuldigen Sie.
Eventually, the situation reached its peak when the Germans established a special residential area for Jews in Warsaw. All Jews had to leave their homes and live in the Jewish district. On October 31, 1940, the Jews in Warsaw were ordered to move to the Jewish district, which was also surrounded by a wall like a prison. The Jewish district was severely overcrowded, and seeing people die of starvation became a common sight. In the Jewish district, Spillman's brother Henrik sold books on the street to make a living, while Spillman, known as a famous pianist, was offered a job playing piano at a restaurant for upper-class Jews. When Spillman and Henrik returned to their residence in the Jewish district, they were visited by a man named Isaac Heller. Isaac had known the Spillman family for a long time. Isaac offered Spillman and Henrik positions in the Jewish police. The function of the Jewish police was to assist the German soldiers in torturing Jews who were considered guilty. The Jewish police usually recruited the children of wealthy Jews, but because they needed more members, they were forced to start recruiting young men from the lower classes. Spillman and Henrik were promised a decent life if they joined the Jewish police, but they both refused. Spillman began working as a pianist in a restaurant for upper-class Jews. After work, Spillman visited his acquaintance named Direct, who owned a printing business. There, Spillman also met Direct's friend, Majorek. Through his printing business, Direct planned to stir the rebellious spirit among his readers. Spillman wanted to help with this plan, but Direct refused, believing that Spillman, as an artist, was not suited for conspiratorial activities. On his way back from Direct's place, Spillman saw several people trying to find food outside the wall. Even small children were sent through tiny holes in the wall to fetch food. Spillman also witnessed a child being caught while trying to return and being beaten to death. While Spillman and his family were having dinner and chatting, they heard the sound of German army vehicles approaching. Everyone panicked and immediately turned off the lights. The German soldiers began entering the building while Spillman and his family watched from the building across the street. They saw a family in the building across being ordered to stand and salute. However, an elderly man from that family was unable to stand, so he was thrown out of the window. After that, the entire family was ordered to run and then shot. The next day, while Spillman was working at the restaurant, Helena came to see him. Helena informed him that Henrik had been detained by the Jewish police while selling books. After work, Spillman went to the place where Henrik was being held. There, Spillman met Isaac. Spillman pleaded with Isaac to release Henrik. Reluctantly, Isaac agreed and released Henrik. On the way home, Henrik collapsed from hunger. Spillman then took Henrik to the restaurant where he worked. The restaurant owner kindly offered free food for Henrik. While eating, Henrik shared information that they would soon be moved to a larger camp called the Ghetto. In the Ghetto, they would also work for the Germans and needed to have worker certificates. Without a worker certificate, they would be deported.
So the rumors were true.
I'm going to reset class.
The next day, Spillman accidentally met Direct and Majorek. Spillman was looking for worker certificates. He had managed to get worker certificates for himself and other family members, except for his father. Direct agreed to help Spillman obtain a worker certificate for his father. Eventually, Spillman succeeded in getting a worker certificate for his father. On the morning of March 15, 1942, people in the Jewish district began to be moved to the ghetto. That night, Spillman stayed in a shelter with other prospective workers. Suddenly, a German soldier entered and ordered them all to go outside to the yard. While lined up in the yard, several people, including Henrik and Helena, were ordered to step forward. The rest were told to pack up and would be moved to the next shelter. One woman asked why they were being moved, but unexpectedly, she was shot just for asking. On August 16, 1942, Spillman and the other workers arrived at a field that served as a temporary shelter. There was no food or drink, and they had to wait for several hours. A few hours later, some trucks arrived carrying more Jews to be relocated. Among them were Henrik and Helena. The Spillman family was finally reunited. After several hours under the scorching sun, they were still waiting to be moved. In the evening, a train arrived. They were all ordered to board the train. As Spillman was about to get on, he was suddenly pulled aside by Isaac. Isaac urged Spillman to leave and hide immediately. Spillman did not realize that Isaac was actually saving him because all the passengers on the train were being taken to a place where they would be burned alive. Spillman walked away, crying, as he had been separated from his family. Spillman then went to the restaurant where he had previously worked. There, he met his boss, who was hiding in a closet. His boss invited Spillman to hide until the situation was safe. A few days later, the remaining Jews, including Spillman and his boss, were made forced laborers under German soldiers' supervision. They were ordered to dismantle the walls in the Jewish district. After working and before returning to the dormitory, they were all lined up. Some, including Spillman's boss, were asked to step forward and were then all shot dead. The next day, during the work break, Spillman met Majorek. Majorek informed him that they would soon be executed. He also mentioned that they would start a resistance movement and that Spillman would join them. When they returned to work, Spillman accidentally dropped the building materials he was carrying. Due to this mistake, Spillman was whipped until he fainted. For Spillman's safety, his foreman moved him to the warehouse to manage the stock of goods and food. Days passed, and Spillman was now assigned to buy potatoes for the workers. Spillman and Majorek used this opportunity to smuggle weapons among the sacks of food. They then threw these weapons over the walls. Upon returning to the dormitory, Spillman gave Majorek a piece of paper with the names and addresses of his Polish acquaintances who were musicians. Spillman asked Majorek to contact them and see if they would help him escape. Majorek agreed to help Spillman. The next night, Majorek told Spillman that he had successfully contacted his musician friends. The next morning, Spillman executed his escape plan. He easily tricked the guards by joining a group of Polish workers. Spillman then went to his musician friend's home, a couple named Janina and Andres. Since it was unsafe to hide Spillman in their house, he was taken to the home of Andres' friend named Marek. There, Spillman had to sleep behind a cabinet filled with weapons and explosives. The next day, Spillman was taken to a safe hiding place. He was brought to an apartment from where he could see the Jewish district he once lived in. Every 2 weeks, Janina would visit the apartment to bring him food supplies. Before leaving, Marek provided another address in case of an emergency requiring Spillman to flee. On April 19, 1943, from his apartment, Spillman witnessed the beginning of the Jewish uprising. Day by day, the Jews fought against the German soldiers. However, due to limited weapons and food supplies, the resistance lasted only a month. The captured rebels met tragic ends. Months later, the Poles also began their resistance movement, but the Gestapo detected their activities. Janina and Andres were imprisoned, while Marek managed to escape. Marek urged Spillman to leave the apartment because it would soon be searched by German soldiers. However, Spillman refused, having no other place to hide. Marek could only hope for Spillman's safety. Days passed, and Spillman's food supplies were exhausted. Spillman was forced to leave the apartment as there was no food left. During his journey, Spillman remembered the emergency address given by Marek. He then went to that address, which turned out to be Dorota's husband's home. Dorota's husband kindly provided a place for Spillman to hide and food supplies for several weeks.
No one knows you're here, so keep as quiet as possible.
A few weeks later, Dorota's husband returned with food along with his friend named Jalis, who would take over delivering food supplies. Dorota's husband also informed that the German army was in trouble as the Russian army had reached the border. Days passed, and Jalis rarely came to bring Spillman food supplies. Spillman became extremely hungry. Eventually, Jalis came with a small amount of food, explaining that he lacked money to buy Spillman food. Spillman then gave Jalis his watch to sell and buy food supplies. But after that, Jalis never returned. Days passed, and Dorota and her husband visited Spillman. They found him lying weak from hunger. Dorota's husband quickly went to find a doctor for Spillman, while Dorota cared for him as best as she could. When Spillman regained consciousness, Dorota said they would move to a safer city. Dorota also revealed that Jalis was a fraud. They discovered that Jalis had collected donations in Spillman's name from many people in Warsaw. Since Spillman was known as a famous pianist, many Poles were touched and gave their money, but Jalis ran off with it.
Apparently people gave generously.
On August 1st, 1944, Spillman's condition had improved. The situation outside was heating up as the Poles launched their uprising. Spillman continuously heard gunfire and explosions until a tank destroyed the wall of his hiding place. Spillman left his hiding place in search of a new one and eventually chose to hide in an abandoned hospital. Days passed as Spillman stayed hidden there. Finally, German soldiers began burning buildings to ensure no rebels were hiding. Spillman fled again in search of a new hiding place. Spillman hid in a ruined house where he found intact canned food. He spent the night trying to find a tool to open the cans. Spillman finally managed to open one, but as he did, the food fell right in front of a German officer named Hosen. Spillman was shocked and couldn't do anything. The officer asked if Spillman was a Jew and what his profession was. Spillman replied that he was a Jew and formerly a pianist. Hearing this, Hosen immediately asked Spillman to play the piano in the house. Despite the pressure and fear of being killed, Spillman played beautifully. After hearing Spillman play, Hosen allowed him to stay hidden in the house. In his free time, Hosen continued to visit Spillman and brought him food. Hosen also mentioned that Spillman only needed to hold on for a few more weeks, as the German army would be withdrawn because the Russian army had entered the city. Weeks passed, and the German soldiers were finally withdrawn. Before leaving, Hosen visited Spillman once more. He gave Spillman food supplies and his coat to keep him warm. Hosen also asked what Spillman planned to do once everything was over. Spillman said he would play the piano again at the Polish radio station. A few weeks later, Spillman heard the Polish national anthem from passing cars. The song signaled that Poland was free from German occupation. Spillman felt happy and immediately left his hiding place to meet people. However, he was shot at and nearly killed because he was wearing the German officer's coat given by Hosen. Spillman explained that he was Polish, and they finally believed him.
Why the fucking coat?
I'm gold.
Yes, he's Polish.
Elsewhere, many German soldiers, including Hosen, were captured by Russian troops. Some Poles who had been freed from German prisons passed by the captured German soldiers. One person shouted that the Germans had taken everything from him, including his violin. Hearing this, Hosen immediately approached him and asked if he was a musician and if he knew a pianist named Spillman. The Pole said that he knew Spillman well. Hosen asked the Pole to inform Spillman about Hosen's situation so that Spillman could help him. A few months later, Spillman was already working as a pianist at the radio station in Poland. The Pole who had spoken with Hosen was indeed Spillman's musician friend. After work, Spillman's musician friend told him about Hosen's situation, and they both went to the place where Hosen had been held. Unfortunately, Hosen was no longer there, and Spillman never knew the name of the German officer who had helped him because Hosen had never told Spillman his name. At the end of the film, it is revealed that Hosen died in a Russian prison in 1952, while Spillman continued his life as a renowned pianist until his death in 2000 at the age of 88. That's all for now, viewers. I hope this film provides valuable lessons for us. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. An American man named Lucas had a video call with his friend Pyotr that day. Pyotr asked Lucas to come to St. Petersburg, Russia, to engage in a business deal involving the sale of rare blue diamonds. Enticed by the potential profits, Lucas decided to travel to Russia to meet Pyotr. Upon arriving in St. Petersburg, at the hotel where he was staying, Lucas met the hotel receptionist named Raisa. Lucas and Raisa already knew each other. Raisa informed Lucas that Pyotr had left the hotel an hour ago because someone had been looking for him, making Pyotr fearful. However, Pyotr left a message with Raisa asking Lucas to go to a small inn called Gurin in Siberia. After that, Lucas asked Raisa for permission to check Pyotr's room.
Can you get me into his room?
In Pyotr's room, Lucas tried to find a sample of the blue diamond that Pyotr might have left there while leaving a voice message for Pyotr. He had only 30 minutes before he was supposed to meet a man named Boris, a potential buyer for the blue diamond. However, Lucas was unable to find the sample diamond.
So call me back, please. Fucking Piotr.
After that, Lucas met with Boris. Boris was a feared Russian mafia boss known for his ruthlessness. Boris demanded that Lucas provide a sample of the blue diamond, but since the sample was still with Piotr, Lucas requested 2 days from Boris to bring the sample as well as all the diamonds Boris wanted.
I'll see in 2 days, Mr. Hill.
2 days.
After the meeting with Boris, Lucas traveled to Siberia to meet Piotr. Upon arriving in Siberia, Lucas went to the Gurin Inn, but the innkeeper informed him that Piotr had already left and had booked a room for Lucas to stay. Shortly afterward, someone called Lucas at the inn. A man named Vincent, a business associate and old friend of Lucas, asked Lucas to sell the blue diamond to him, but Lucas refused without giving any reason.
Lucas,
Anywhere still open for a drink?
up the street, there is a cafe.
Buxom.
After that, Lucas went to a small cafe near the Gurin Inn. At the cafe, Lucas continued trying to contact Piotr, but to no avail. Not long after, Lucas got into a minor altercation with a customer in the cafe. Lucas reprimanded one of the customers for being rude to the cafe owner named Katya. When Lucas left the cafe, the customer he had reprimanded attacked him. Outnumbered, Lucas was beaten until he passed out. When Katya was about to leave her cafe, she found Lucas unconscious in front of the cafe. The next morning, when Lucas woke up, he was at Katya's house. Lucas then made toast while trying to contact Piotr. Lucas made the toast for Katya as a gesture of thanks for helping him. While eating the toast made by Lucas, Katya overheard Lucas's conversation as he tried to contact Piotr and asked who Piotr was, but Lucas remained silent and did not answer her.
Who is Piotr?
After finishing the toast made by Lucas, Katya unexpectedly asked Lucas to have sex with her, but Lucas declined because he wanted to focus on his mission. Lucas told Katya that he needed to meet Andrei, Piotr's brother, at a mining site. Katya offered to take Lucas there, but also asked him to return to her house afterward.
You are very forward.
You find this unappealing. We come back here. Agreed?
Upon arriving at the mining site, Lucas met with Andrei and discussed Piotr's whereabouts. Andrei explained that Piotr was hiding because he had sold fake blue diamonds to a mafia boss named Samsonov. Samsonov, a former Russian Special Forces member, was hunting Piotr down because he was furious about being deceived. Hearing Andrei's explanation, Lucas was shocked by what Piotr had done.
They are former Spetsnaz members.
The fuck are you talking about?
A bad man.
That evening, Lucas relaxed at Katya's cafe. There, Lucas was confronted by Katya's brothers. They warned Lucas not to stay at Katya's house anymore. Then they escorted Lucas back to the Gurin Inn. At the inn, Lucas had a video call with his wife. They shared stories about their day. After ending the call, Lucas, feeling lonely, played with a large candle in the room. He eventually decided to return to Katya.
You're not a good man.
When he arrived at Katya's house, Lucas gave her the large candle from his inn room as a gift. After that, Lucas and Katya had slept. The next morning, Lucas returned to his inn. He contacted his associates and asked them to book a flight back to St. Petersburg. Upon arriving in St. Petersburg, Lucas searched Pyotr's former hotel room and found a blue diamond hidden inside a large candle. He then called Katya and asked her to bring the large candle he had given her to St. Petersburg. Afterward, Lucas analyzed the diamond with his machine and confirmed it was genuine. Shortly after, Boris called Lucas on Pyotr's hotel room phone. Boris demanded that Lucas bring the blue diamond sample to a specified location. After ending the call with Boris, Vincent also contacted Lucas, asking to meet him somewhere. Lucas then met with Vincent, who informed him that the Russian Federal Security Service was after him. They wanted the blue diamond. Vincent urged Lucas to quit the blue diamond business to save his life.
Go home. Now. Before it's too late.
Later, Lucas went to pick up Katya at the airport. In Pyotr's hotel room, Lucas and Katya checked the diamond in the large candle Katya brought, but it turned out to be a fake diamond. Frustrated with Lucas's obsession with the diamond, Katya suddenly asked Lucas to sleep with her again.
Fuck me. Right now.
That evening, Lucas and Katya met with Boris and handed over the diamond sample. After confirming its authenticity, Boris accepted the sample and awaited the rest. Lucas and Katya then returned to the hotel, only to find the Russian Federal Security Service, FSB, already there. In the hotel room, the FSB explained their presence to Lucas. They had been paid by Samsonov to obtain the genuine blue diamond. They demanded that Lucas sell the fake diamonds Pyotr had sold to Samsonov to Boris. If Lucas agreed, they would ensure his safe return to America, protecting him from Boris's wrath. However, if Lucas refused, they would kill Katya, whom they had already taken hostage. Not wanting Katya to be harmed, Lucas reluctantly complied with their demand. The next day, Lucas met with Boris and handed over the fake diamonds. Without hesitation, Boris accepted all the diamonds and transferred the money to an account arranged by the FSB. After the meeting, the FSB escorted Lucas to the airport. At the airport, Lucas received a message from Andrei, Pyotr's brother, revealing Pyotr's location. Lucas postponed his return to America and went to Katya's house. He asked Katya's brothers to accompany him to see Pyotr. Upon arriving at Pyotr's location, Lucas found him dead. Lucas realized he had been ensnared in Pyotr's dirty business. He then asked Katya's brothers to leave him alone, knowing that Boris and his men would soon come after him. After hearing Lucas's explanation, Katya's brothers gave Lucas a rifle and left. Soon after, Boris's men arrived at the location. From his hiding place, Lucas tried to fight them off, using the rifle given by Katya's brothers. However, outnumbered, Lucas was eventually shot and killed. Set in 1820, a group of men embarks on a journey with a ship heading towards the Missouri River to explore the new America and trade their goods. During this expedition, a man named Zachary Bass serves as the guide. Additionally, Bass is tasked with hunting to provide food for the group. After traveling a considerable distance, they rest at a certain spot. While Bass and his friend Laurie go into the forest to hunt, Bass successfully shoots a deer, while Laurie only wounds his target. Consequently, Bass follows the injured deer's trail. When Bass finds the deer's tracks, suddenly, a large bear attacks him. Seeing Bass in danger, Laurie, instead of helping, leaves Bass and reports the incident to their captain, named Henry. Captain Henry and his men immediately rush to the scene and manage to kill the bear, but they are too late as Bass is already critically injured. Captain Henry orders his doctor, named Ferris, to stitch up Bass's wounds, but Dr. Ferris says that Bass is dying and likely cannot be saved. However, Captain Henry insists that he stitches up Bass's wounds.
Captain.
Dr. Ferris reports to Captain Henry that Bass has broken bones and has lost a lot of blood. Bass can still breathe, but he will not last long. Hearing this, Captain Henry asks 2 of his men to stay with Bass until he dies and bury him, while he and the others continue their journey, as it is suspected that the Indians will pass through the area. Henry instructs Laurie to read the Bible to Bass until he dies and bury him. But if by the next day, Bass is still breathing, Henry asks Fogarty to shoot Bass. It turns out that Bass is still slightly conscious and can hear all their conversations.
Yes. What if he ain't dead by morning?
Kill him.
Before they continue their journey, one of Captain Henry's men, who is an Indian, approaches Bass and prays for him. He also gives Bass his amulet necklace. After they leave, Fogarty immediately prepares a grave for Bass.
It'll be ready the minute he is.
The next day, Fogarty and Laurie see some Indians passing nearby. Fogarty tells Laurie that the Indians are probably chasing their group because there are rumors that the Indians enjoy hunting humans. But judging by their movements, Laurie says that the Indians are just on a regular journey. After the Indians pass by, Fogarty approaches Bass to check his condition. Fogarty is surprised to see that Bass is still alive, although his condition is beyond saving. But as per Captain Henry's orders, if Bass is still alive that day, Fogarty is to shoot him. When Fogarty is about to shoot Bass, Laurie stops him, fearing that the sound of Fogarty's gunshot will be heard by the Indians who passed by earlier. Realizing this, Fogarty does not shoot Bass, and Laurie decides to leave Bass with a Bible.
Sorry, Mr. Bass.
After Fogarty and Laurie leave, Bass, still lying helplessly, is approached by a hungry wolf. As the wolf is about to attack, Bass rolls his body to the riverbank. Fortunately, the wolf gets scared and runs away, saving Bass from the attack. Thirsty, Bass tries to scoop some river water to drink. Soon after, Bass hears many horse hooves from another direction. The sounds come from a group of Indians. Seeing this, Bass quickly hides, but despite his efforts, the Indians accidentally discover him. Seeing Bass's dire condition, the Indian chief feels pity. After noticing the amulet necklace hanging around Bass's neck, the chief prays for Bass and leaves him lying there. After the Indians leave, in a semi-conscious state, Bass recalls the words of his late wife, Nisa, who was pregnant at the time. Nisa told Bass that God exists in everything, including within each person, but Bass responded that he hadn't felt that within himself. Nisa then asked Bass to feel the baby kicking in her womb. After feeling the baby kick, Bass realized that God indeed exists in everything. He also told his wife that if their child was born while he wasn't by their side, she shouldn't worry because he would always love them both.
I care for you, for both of you, more than any.
Remembering all this, Bass notices a Bible in his pocket. Meanwhile, Fogarty and Laurie have rejoined their group. Fogarty tells Captain Henry that they left Bass alive because they feared the sound of a gunshot would attract the nearby Indians. Hearing this, one of them suggests going back to retrieve Bass, but Captain Henry refuses, saying Bass must have already been killed by the Indians. They then continue their journey.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
The next day, Bass, now conscious, sees two wolves devouring a buffalo. Driven by hunger, Bass bravely approaches the wolves with a stick. He manages to scare them away. Bass then takes a small portion of the buffalo meat, brings it to a safe place, and eats it. During their journey, Captain Henry and his men encounter the Indians. Without any reason, Captain Henry orders his men to shoot at the Indians, even though the Indian chief raises his hands, signaling they do not want any bloodshed. However, as they are continuously attacked, the Indians flee to save themselves. Elsewhere, while Bass is gnawing on buffalo bones, he sees a group of hunters passing by with an Indian girl they have captured. Bass immediately hides, and soon after, he sees Indians arrive in the area. These Indians are searching for the hunters who dared to kidnap a girl from their tribe. Shortly after, the Indians find the hunters and launch an attack. After the battle ends, Bass approaches the scene and finds a knife, a partially burned warm coat, a razor, and a piece of wire. He then sets off to find a place to shelter. Once he secures a spot, Bass tries to light a fire using the Bible and the knife he found. Starving, Bass constructs a device to trap a rabbit, and his effort pays off. He successfully catches a rabbit. He uses its skin to wrap around his walking stick to prevent his hands from hurting as he uses it for support. In his shelter, Bass cooks the rabbit meat and treats his wounds with leaves he finds in the forest. He then falls asleep. The next day, Bass makes a spear from the knife he found earlier. He heads to the riverbank to spear fish. In the following days, Bass manages to kill a puma that gets caught in his trap. He uses the puma's skin to make a bag. Feeling stronger, Bass decides to track down Captain Henry to seek revenge. Bass travels a long distance until he reaches a river. Hungry, he catches some fish and cooks them. While Bass is cooking, he sees a group of Indians approaching. He quickly extinguishes his fire and hides. An Indian woman, who is pregnant, sits near a tree branch and goes into labor. Watching from a distance, Bass is reminded of his late wife, who died after giving birth to their child. Unable to accept God's will, Bass had left their child with Nisa's parents. After a while, the Indian woman safely gives birth. Seeing this, Bass is deeply moved and begins to believe that God's plans are never wrong. After the Indians leave, Bass resumes his journey. That night, at Captain Henry's camp, Fogarty, who is on guard, sees Bass walking toward him from the forest. In fear, Fogarty shoots, but upon inspection, he discovers he has shot Laurie instead. Despite clearly seeing Bass approaching, Fogarty has been haunted by visions of Bass due to his guilt since abandoning him.
I seen him! It was that Bass!
Captain Henry's group continues their journey until they finally reach the Missouri River. Unfortunately, they are too late, as the river is already frozen due to winter. They are forced to continue their journey overland. Elsewhere, during his travels, Bass finds an injured rabbit. He takes the rabbit and brings it to his shelter. After treating the rabbit's wounds, Bass reads portions of the Bible he carries with him. He now deeply appreciates the value of life. Bass has learned many spiritual lessons since being abandoned by his group and struggling to survive.
There is hope for a tree if it be cut down.
The next day, Bass resumes his journey to catch up with Captain Henry. Eventually, he succeeds in finding Captain Henry and his group. At the same time, Captain Henry's group is attacked by Indians. Captain Henry orders his men to shoot at the Indians, but the Indians outnumber them, as they are seeking revenge for the previous unprovoked attack by Henry's group. Bass arrives and helps his group fight off the Indians, but gets captured. Suddenly, the Indian chief orders his men to release Bass. The chief approaches Bass and sees the amulet necklace around his neck. He is astonished to see that Bass has recovered, despite previously appearing near death. The chief says that Bass's recovery is a miracle from God. He then gives Bass a spear and instructs him to kill Captain Henry, knowing that Henry is the leader who left Bass to die. Bass approaches Captain Henry, but when face-to-face with him, decides against taking revenge. Bass tells Captain Henry that all he wants is to go home and see his child. Captain Henry and his group then follow Bass, realizing they cannot continue their journey without him.
Arturs, a young Soviet soldier from Latvia, had to endure the relentless assault from German forces. Arturs was part of the volunteer soldiers in the 3rd Regiment. Many of his comrades perished in the battle. As Arturs advanced, attempting to retaliate against the German attack, an explosion caused a tree to fall on him. Despite the pain, Arturs managed to get up and continued moving forward with his remaining comrades. The story flashes back to 2 years before the war. Arturs and his brother Edgar were on their way home, living a peaceful and calm life, until one day, German soldiers invaded their village. Panicked, Arturs' mother ordered him to hide under the bed. A German soldier entered their house as part of a routine check of all the village homes, searching for suspected Soviet spies. The soldier soon left upon hearing a commotion outside, as his comrades had apprehended a civilian suspected of being a Soviet spy. Curious, Arturs peeked outside to see what was happening. During the commotion, Arturs' dog broke free and ran towards the German soldiers. The Germans shot the dog, and tragically, Arturs' mother was also hit. Seeing his mother shot, Arturs quickly grabbed a rifle and ran outside, but it was too late. The soldiers had already left. Arturs could only weep as he saw his mother and dog lying dead in front of him. The next day, several Soviet soldiers warned the villagers to kill their livestock rather than hand them over to the Germans. Following this, Arturs and his father, Vanax, buried their valuables and killed all their livestock. They then burned their house and left the village with the other villagers. Arturs and his father decided to enlist as volunteer soldiers. Initially, they were rejected because Arturs was too young and Vanax was too old. In response, Vanax showed his documents proving he had been a sergeant. Due to this, both were accepted into the volunteer army. Before being sent to the battlefield, Arturs and the other volunteers underwent rigorous training to become tough soldiers. During training, Arturs joked around with a comrade. As punishment, they had to stand on one leg for an hour, administered by Arturs' father, who was authorized to lead the volunteers. While resting after training, a German fighter plane suddenly approached. All the soldiers quickly took cover before the plane attacked. Senior soldiers attempted to shoot down the German plane. Although they failed to bring it down, they managed to drive it away. After the attack, Arturs' father, who led the volunteer troops, equipped all the soldiers with full weaponry as they were to be sent to the front line. Once armed, they were lined up and given instructions. They were to march 40 kilometers and reach the front line in about 7 hours. After receiving the briefing, they immediately set out for the front. Upon arriving at the defensive trench, they were immediately hit by artillery fire from the German forces. The explosions were so loud that Arturs' ears started to bleed. Arturs' father ordered the volunteers to return fire. Otherwise, the German forces would intensify their assault. The volunteers moved slowly through the fog, which limited their visibility. Unknowingly, Arturs wandered away from his unit. Realizing he was separated, he panicked and fired his weapon at a tree. Shortly after, he rejoined his unit. They continued to advance slowly until one by one, Arturs' comrades were shot dead by German snipers. Realizing they were near the enemy's defensive trench, they rushed forward, entering the German trench. Inside, Arturs encountered a young German soldier around his age. He hesitated, and the German soldier was pushed and impaled on Arturs' bayonet. Shortly after, Arturs was also pushed and lost consciousness. Arturs regained consciousness after the battle had ended. The volunteers had successfully captured the German trench. As night fell, the volunteers returned to their base. Upon arrival, they returned their weapons. After their first battle, they rested and ate whatever was available. They even had to sleep in cramped conditions. The next day, they returned to the defensive trench. While one soldier was scouting the area, he was shot by a German sniper. Arturs' father asked for a volunteer to locate the sniper. Arturs volunteered for the task. He, his father, and another soldier moved cautiously to find the sniper. Eventually, they located the sniper. When they caught him, Arturs hesitated to kill him, allowing the sniper to signal his comrades by firing his weapon. Before Arturs' comrade could kill the sniper's comrade shot in the direction of the sound. Arturs, his father, and the other soldier tried to return to the trench, but unfortunately, Arturs was shot in the neck. In a panic, his father rushed Arturs to the medics for treatment. Luckily, the medics were able to remove the bullet from Arturs' throat, and he survived. After receiving medical treatment in the hospital, Arter's condition improved significantly. A girl named Martha, a volunteer in the medical team, took great care of Arters during his stay. Once he fully recovered, Arters mustered the courage to introduce himself to Martha.
This
is Martha.
In 1916, Arters and all the volunteer soldiers were sent to a place known as the Island of Death, where they had to face German forces. During the battle, the Germans used poisonous gas to attack the volunteers. The soldiers who didn't have gas masks had to use wet cloths to breathe. At that time, Arters and his brother Edgar were worried about their father's safety on the battlefield. Soon after, they were relieved to see that their father was safe. A few days later, while they were on guard duty in the trench, the commander told Arters that his father had not been seen for a while. Hearing this, Arters immediately ran to find his father. He left the trench and crawled through the battlefield until he found his father's lifeless body. Afterward, they buried Arters' father with his weapon. The commander was furious when he found out that Arters had buried the weapon along with his father. The commander threatened to take Arters to a military court for losing the weapon. However, Arters insisted that his father deserved to be buried with his weapon since he had killed 56 Germans with it. Hearing this, the commander agreed and gave his final respects to Van Axe. During the winter, the volunteer soldiers were invited to join the Siberian unit of the 12th Regiment. They were assigned to liberate Jelgava from the German forces. Still harboring a grudge against the Germans, Arters volunteered to join the Siberian unit. That night, Arters and the Siberian unit arrived in Jelgava. Arters cut through the barbed wire to create a path for his unit. After that, he and a comrade stood guard with small shields, waiting for the right moment to attack. Soon, their position was discovered by the enemy. A German soldier fired at them and hit Arters' comrade. Arters quickly signaled his unit to attack. The Siberian unit moved forward, trying to break through the German defenses. By the next day, they had successfully captured Jelgava and detained the surviving German soldiers. That night, Arters rejoined the volunteer troops. In the early morning, the commander ordered the volunteer troops back to their previous positions to resume fighting. By morning, the volunteer troops returned to the battlefield, but their advance was halted by continuous artillery fire from the Germans. Unexpectedly, Edgar was hit by an artillery explosion. Arters immediately rushed to his brother, but unfortunately, Edgar had died from the explosion. At the same time, the commander ordered all troops to retreat. With a heavy heart, Arters had to leave his brother's body buried on the battlefield. When the volunteer troops reached the temporary camp, they encountered civilians searching for their family members who had gone to the battlefield. There, Arters also met Martha, who was looking for her father. Arters promised Martha he would send a letter if he found her father.
Je kaut ko uzzināšu, es jums uzrakstīšu.
2 months passed, and Arters wrote a letter to Martha. Arters informed her that he had sustained a leg injury after being shot and that he could only wait for his recovery to be complete. While traveling by train, Arturs overheard civilians talking about how Soviet government soldiers were killing their own people, but Arturs dismissed it as mere rumors. Upon reaching his destination, Arturs saw several volunteer soldiers about to be executed. Among them was his friend Michelson. The soldiers were accused of being traitors. Unexpectedly, Arturs and his comrades were ordered to execute them all. Arturs' comrades were forced to shoot the soldiers, but Arturs refused on humanitarian grounds. As a result, the commander also accused Arturs of being a traitor. For this reason, Arturs was arrested and was to be imprisoned. While Arturs was detained, the commander unexpectedly released him. Arturs immediately punched the commander in anger for executing his friend. The commander explained that the executions had to be carried out. Otherwise, all the volunteer troops would be deemed traitors and executed. After escaping, Arturs and his comrade planned to meet Martha, as she was the only one who could help them hide. But shortly after, some mounted soldiers found and chased them. Arturs' comrade was shot dead, and Arturs was also shot in the arm. Arturs managed to escape and meet Martha. Seeing Arturs injured, Martha immediately treated him. Once the situation was safe, Arturs returned to his comrade's body with Martha and buried him. After the burial, Arturs decided to leave Martha. He gave her his ring and promised to return to her. Arturs decided to join a neutral army unit composed mostly of underage soldiers. Arturs joined them to protect the railway bridge from Estonia, which would transport weapons. On the battlefield, they were terrified of the German forces, as they had no combat experience. But with great bravery, Arturs led his troops to face the enemy without fear. Arturs emulated his father's leadership on the battlefield. The soldiers rallied and bravely fought the enemy, ultimately driving the Germans back on the railway line. In the next battle, in a snowy desert, many of Arturs' comrades died. Arturs prayed for his family members who had perished in battle defending their homeland. While praying, Arturs heard whispers from Edgar and his father, who were also praying for him. Arturs rose again to continue fighting with his remaining comrades. After losing his family and home, Arturs found solace in joining the National Army. But war was not what Arturs had imagined. There was no glory, no justice. It was all brutal and painful. Hopefully, this film can teach us a valuable lesson. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.
In a river in the hinterlands of Taiwan, the people of the Bunun tribe were hunting wild boars. When the cornered wild boars were being pursued, they were attacked by people from the Mahabu tribe. After some members of the Bunun tribe were killed, Mona Rudao, the son of the chief of the Mahabu tribe, swam across the Mona River. He took the heads of the Bunun tribe members and also seized their hunted wild boars. However, shortly afterward, the people of the Bunun tribe returned to retaliate against the Mahebu tribe. Mona tried to escape from the pursuit of the Bunun tribe members until he finally managed to elude them. After that, the Mahebu tribe members returned to their village, considering it a successful offering of blood sacrifices to their ancestors. Mona was given a tattoo signifying adulthood called Sidik Bale in the hinterlands of Taiwan. At that time, conflicts between tribes were common in Taiwan, and hunting the heads of enemies was a custom that brought pride to the youth of all tribes. Those who succeeded in bringing the heads of enemies were given tattoos on their foreheads and chins, making them worthy of being called Sidik Bale or true men. In 1895, China ceded the island of Taiwan to Japan through the Treaty of Shimonoseki. The leaders of the Japanese Empire viewed the indigenous people on the island of Taiwan as obstacles to exploiting its resources. Japan planned to occupy the entire territory of Taiwan with its military might. In the deep forests of Taiwan, while Mona and his father were hunting, Mona shared a dream of catching a white-spotted deer. Shortly thereafter, they saw the sisson bird, considered a harbinger of good news. Seeing the bird, Mona's father allowed him to hunt the white-spotted deer for his wedding celebration. At the same time, the Japanese army had already entered Taiwan and began their colonization. Civilians tried to resist with makeshift weapons, but with more modern weaponry, the Japanese forces successfully occupied the town of Was and eliminated civilians who resisted. In the forested hinterlands, Mona successfully hunted the white-spotted deer. That night, the Mahebu tribe held Mona's wedding celebration. They danced together to the rhythm of their tribal songs. The next morning, Japan began capturing the remaining residents of Was who were still resisting. Meanwhile, Mona visited a small trader outside the mountainous region, exchanging deer hides for salt. Shortly thereafter, a group from the Tenbera tribe also arrived at the location. The Tenbera tribe was also in conflict with the Mahebu tribe. The trader warned Mona not to cause trouble, but as Mona was about to leave, he started provoking by insulting the belongings of Tenbera, a young man from the Tenbera tribe named Temu Wallace, threatening to cut off Mona's head when he grew up. Unwilling to be threatened, Mona retaliated by threatening to kill Temu Wallace first. On the way back to the Tenbera tribe village, they realized they were being stalked. When Mona aimed, a man from his own tribe intervened and was accidentally shot by Mona. The Tenbera tribe managed to escape the ambush. At the same time, the Japanese paid a villager from the inland tribe to guide them to the mountainous region. After all preparations were completed, the Japanese soldiers immediately set out for the mountainous region. That night, they rested in a garden of cherry blossom trees. In the morning, before continuing their journey, they took a moment to appreciate the beauty of the cherry blossom trees. Unexpectedly, at that moment, they were attacked by the Tenbera tribe. As a result of the incident, the Japanese began to blockade the entire Wus region. They expelled traders and prohibited them from transacting with the inland tribes. After that, Japan sent a large force to the inland region, but on their way, they were attacked by the Mahebu tribe. The Mahebu tribe also pelted the Japanese forces with large stones. In that battle, Mona collected many Japanese soldiers' heads. Due to the attack, Japan paid members of the Bunun tribe to exterminate the Mahebu tribe. Then, atop a mountain, the Bunun tribe encountered the Mahebu tribe led by Mona. The Bunun tribe invited the Mehebu tribe to make peace as they faced a common enemy, the Japanese soldiers. They drank wine together until they were intoxicated. At that moment, the Bunun tribe allowed the Mehebu tribe to consume a large amount of wine. In the night, the Bunun tribe beheaded the heavily intoxicated Mehebu tribe members, but Mona and a few others managed to escape. After slaughtering the Mehebu tribe, the Bunun tribe celebrated with the Japanese soldiers in the following days. The Japanese soldiers began to attack the Mehebu tribe village. The Mehebu tribe continued to resist. In the battle, Rudo, Mona's father, was shot and killed. Mona carried his father away from the battlefield, and eventually, the Japanese soldiers successfully occupied the Mehebu tribe village. Mona and the remaining youth of the Mehebu tribe were eventually captured by the Japanese soldiers. When the Japanese soldiers confiscated the skulls collected by Mona, he became angry and struck one of the Japanese soldiers. As a result of the incident, Mona was arrested and imprisoned for 20 years. Eventually, Japan gained complete control over Wus. The youth from the inland tribes in Wus are now working for Japan. They work to provide wood from their own forests for the Japanese. Japan pays them very little for the wood they obtain. During a break from work, a kind-hearted Chinese trader gives free wine to the inland tribe youths. While chatting, the inland tribe youths express their feelings. They are increasingly disgusted with the treatment by the Japanese. In fact, the Japanese are even cutting down trees considered sacred by the inland tribes. Shortly after, a Japanese police officer approaches them. The officer is named Zero, a youth from the Bunga tribe educated by the Japanese. Zero even lives with Japanese culture in the city of Wus. The Mehebu tribe youths mock Zero because he wears the Japanese police uniform.
Oh, yanami atusei te kayami.
The women from the inland tribes work as maids in the homes of the Japanese. They are often insulted and demeaned. Meanwhile, the children from the inland tribes receive education from the Japanese. Dakis, a youth from the Mehebu tribe who also became a Japanese police officer, teaches them the Japanese language. After teaching, Dakis hurries home to check on his wife, who is about to give birth in the deep forest. Tada Mona and his younger brother Basso Mona, along with some Mehebu tribe youths, dance upon seeing a rainbow. Tado and Basso are the sons of Mano Rudeo. In the Mehebu village, the elderly Mona contemplates the future of the forest. Mona is now the chief of the Mehebu tribe. The Mehebu tribe children also recognize Mona as a hero in the Mehebu tribe when he was young. At that time, a Mehebu tribe boy named Pawan complained to Mona about the unfair treatment by Japanese teachers towards the inland tribe children. Seeing the rainbow, Mona decides to go hunting. In the woodshed, Pivu, a youth from the Mehebu tribe, is scolded by a Japanese soldier named Yoshimura because the wood they brought is damaged. Although Pivu explained that they fell while carrying the wood, Yoshimura remained indifferent and became angrier. Unexpectedly, Mona arrives and immediately topples Yoshimura. The argument stops after Mona tells the Mehebu youths to go home, but Yoshimura still refuses to accept their behavior. A few days later, Tado and Basso borrow their confiscated weapons from the Japanese. After that, they go hunting deer with their fathers in preparation for the Mehebu tribe wedding celebration. They hunt in the Mehebu tribe hunting grounds. While hunting, Mona hears gunshots and immediately goes to the source of the gunfire. It turns out the shots are from the rifle of Temu Wallace, a youth from the Tenbera tribe who had threatened Mona before. Mona is angry because Temu Wallace dared to enter the Mehebu tribe hunting grounds. but a Japanese police officer named Kojima explains that he asked Temu Wallace to accompany him for hunting in that area. When the Mehebu tribe held a wedding celebration, Mona secretly collected gunpowder from the matchstick stems. While the Mehebu tribe youths were slaughtering their hunted pigs, Yoshimura arrived. Tato offered a glass of wine to welcome Yoshimura, but Yoshimura became angry because his uniform got dirty with pig's blood from Tato's hands. A fight ensued, and the Mehebu tribe youths collectively beat Yoshimura. Shortly after, Mona arrived to stop the commotion. Yoshimura's comrades also came, displeased with the treatment. Yoshimura threatened to exterminate the Mehebu tribe. The next day, Mona, Tato, and Basso went to Yoshimura's office carrying a jug of wine as an apology. However, Yoshimura had already reported the assault case and rejected their apology. Elsewhere, Dacus and Zero conversed after martial arts training as inland tribe members. They both highly respected Mona and learned that Mona was involved in the assault case against Yoshimura. Meanwhile, at home, Tato and Basso urged their father to resist Japan, but Mona got angry and beat them instead. Tato left the house and encountered the Japanese governor. When he crossed a bridge without showing respect, Tato simply passed by the Japanese governor. Tato could no longer hide his hatred towards the Japanese. Meanwhile, Mona, sitting by the river, was surprised when he heard a voice calling him. Unexpectedly, the figure of his deceased father appeared before him. His father reminded Mona that he was a Sidic Baal who had no fear. It was as if his father revived Mona's spirit to become a Sidic Baal again. Then, his father invited Mona to sing the Sidic Baal song. That night, the Mehebu tribe youths discussed the Japanese actions that had become intolerable towards their people. The next day, the Mehebu tribe youths persuaded Mona to resist Japan. However, Mona, having witnessed the strength of Japan, reminded the youths that their tribe could be annihilated by Japan. But the Mehebu tribe youths stated that they would rather die fighting than live oppressed. Hearing their words, Mona finally brought out the gunpowder he had been collecting for years. Mona instructed Pitu and several youths to invite other tribes in a massive attack planned for October 27 during the Sports Week event in Woos. Some tribes refused to join the resistance against Japan because they feared their lineage would be erased by Japan. Before October 27, the Mehebu tribe youths began preparing for their resistance, breaking down the timing and escape routes likely to be used by the Japanese army. Seeing the movements of the Dacus tribe youths, Mona began to grow suspicious and immediately approached Dacus. Dacus reminded them all that Japan is very powerful, and they would die in vain if they fought against Japan. Upon hearing this, Mona became angry and reminded Dacus that it's better to die fighting as Sidic Balay than to live oppressed. Dacus finally informed them that there were 139 weapons and a lot of ammunition in the arsenal. On October 27, he and Zero would be on duty, and both of them would be on the side of the Mehebu tribe. Later that evening, Dacus prepared the Mehebu tribe attire he would wear while on duty, while Mona danced on the mountains as a form of seeking support from their ancestors. On the night of October 26, the youths entertained themselves by eliminating Japanese police throughout the Hughes region while singing their tribal songs. The Mehebu youths burned down the Japanese police headquarters. After destroying the police headquarters, Mona approached the leader of the Bungu tribe, who initially refused to join the fight against Japan. But after Mona scolded and convinced him, the Bungu tribe chief joined the cause. On the morning of October 27, the city of Woos was shrouded in thick fog. This condition indicated that their ancestors were helping in the attack. Before launching the attack, Mona ignited the spirits of the youths from all tribes, while everyone in Woos had gathered in the field to leaven up the Sports Week event. The Japanese started the event by singing their national anthem while raising their flag. Shortly after, a Mahebu tribe youth infiltrated and beheaded one Japanese soldier. He then ran away with the head. The Japanese soldiers immediately chased him, but in the forest, they were swiftly eliminated. Afterwards, Basso fired a shot as a signal for the start of the attack. Youths from all tribes slaughtered all Japanese, including women and children, while Tado and some youths waited for the Japanese who escaped through escape routes. Inland tribe children carried sharpened bamboo to kill their Japanese teachers. Meanwhile, Kojima, who was in the Tempura tribe area, had not realized the attack in Woos. After the massive attack succeeded, decapitated Japanese corpses lay everywhere. Mona sat under the flagpole, looking up at the sky, as if expressing gratitude to their ancestors. Well, that was the dark history experienced by the inland tribes on the island of Taiwan. To honor the struggle of Mona Rudao, the government of Taiwan erected the Minato statue in the city of Nantou. The figure of Minato himself has been immortalized on one of the Taiwanese coins. Hopefully, this film can provide valuable lessons for us. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.